My wife screamed, "Why don't you want me? What's your problem?" I smiled. "It's okay. Brett does." She went pale immediately. What happened next was absolute chaos. Sup, Reddit. I'm Billy, 34 male. My wife of 8 years thought Thursday nights were her little secret. She was half right. Grab your popcorn and enjoy the shit show. She was leaning against the kitchen island, robe barely tied, some overpriced candle flickering on the counter that probably cost $40 and smelled like a yoga studio having a midlife crisis. The house had that weird quiet it gets around 6 in the evening here in Linden. Kids inside on every block. TVs murmuring behind blinds. Sprinklers clicking off one by one. Samantha tipped her chin toward me with that look, the one she probably practiced in mirrors when I was at work. I turned off the faucet and let the water drain. Kept my voice flat. Not interested, especially not after Brett. The smile on her face jumped, then froze. A tiny flinch around her eyes that lasted maybe half a second before she pulled herself together. Then she went straight for damage control like it was second nature. "You're being dramatic again, Billy. Paranoid. Remember when you accused that mechanic at the other shop of stealing parts? You do this. That guy was actually stealing parts. Got fired 2 months later when the security camera caught him loading a catalytic converter into his trunk at 2 a.m. But sure, I'm the paranoid one. Here's the thing about catching someone. It's not one big moment. It's 100 small things that finally add up to a number you can't argue with. Evening walks that started 3 months ago after she never walked anywhere in 8 years of marriage. Phone suddenly locked and glued to her hand like it had government secrets on it. Giggles over messages on the back porch at 11 when she thought I was asleep. A new perfume that didn't smell like her. Some floral thing that made me think of hotel lobbies and airport duty-free shops. I'd been adding them up for weeks, running the math while I changed oil and replaced brake pads at Carter Auto during the day, and stared at the ceiling at night wondering how I'd missed it earlier. Lying next to someone you don't trust is lonelier than lying alone. She tried to change the subject. Something about bills. The clogged gutter that had been backing up since October. The neighbor's dog that kept getting into our trash. Typical redirect. I rinsed the cutting board, dried my hands on the towel, and walked past her without brushing her arm. Didn't say goodnight. Heard her exhale behind me like I'd just failed some test she was sure I'd pass. That was the last night I slept in her bed. But it wasn't the start of my exit. It was the start of strategy mode. See, most guys in my position would have confronted her right there. Demanded answers. Yelled. Thrown something breakable. That's what she expected. That's what her best friend Veronica had probably coached her to handle over their countless girls' nights on the back porch. Veronica, the twice-divorced real estate agent who'd been whispering poison in Samantha's ear for 2 years about how Samantha deserved more. How I was too simple. Too content with a stable life instead of whatever fantasy Veronica was chasing between her failed relationships. I wasn't going to give them a scene to spin. I was going to give them paperwork they couldn't argue with. The next morning, I called my buddy Cole before my shift started. Cole has been my best friend since we both got cut from the high school basketball team junior year. Neither of us could shoot, but we bonded over failing together and discovered we had the same taste in music and the same complaints about dads who worked too much. He became a plumber, makes solid money, married his high school girlfriend Holly, has a 7-year-old named Jake. More importantly, Cole is the kind of guy who shows up with a truck and asks questions later. The kind of friend who will help you move furniture at midnight without needing to know why. I need help with something. This week. Send me a pin. I'll be there. Then I made another call. To a guy named Cliff who works as a paralegal at a family law firm downtown. I know Cliff from the shop. He brings his old Camaro in for maintenance every few months, and we trade stories about cars and custody battles he's watched blow up. I asked if he could point me toward an attorney who handles things quietly and thoroughly. Cliff didn't ask why, just said he'd text me a name by lunch, and that whatever I was dealing with, I should start documenting everything now. Screenshots, receipts, calendar entries, bank statements, anything that shows a pattern over time instead of a single thing someone could explain away. I spent my lunch break in the parking lot behind Carter Auto, photographing our shared calendar on my phone. 5 weeks of Thursday blocks labeled vague with just the word meeting. No location, no details, no indication of who or what. Every single one starting at 6 p.m. like clockwork. Pretty punctual for someone who couldn't remember our anniversary 3 years running. Then I photographed our joint account statements. The new charges at boutiques downtown I'd never heard of. The spa visits that lined up with her supposed conference trips. The gym membership she paid for monthly, but hadn't used since February, based on the location check-ins I could see on the shared family app she'd forgotten about. Cliff texted me the attorney's name around 2. A woman named Nina, who apparently specialized in what Cliff called high-conflict divorces with asset protection. I made an appointment for Friday. Now here's the interesting part. Samantha's dad, Warren, is old money pretending to be humble. The kind of guy who wears flannel shirts that cost $200 and talks about the value of hard work while living off a trust fund his grandfather set up during the manufacturing boom. When Samantha and I were getting married 8 years ago, he sat me down in his study and explained that he just wanted to protect his little girl from unfortunate circumstances. I was 26, working at an auto parts store, marrying into a family that owned half the commercial real estate on the west side of town. I figured the prenup was aimed squarely at me, a warning shot from a protective father who didn't trust the mechanic dating his princess. It was, mostly. But here's the thing about prenups drafted by expensive lawyers who bill by the hour and cover every scenario they can think of. They work both ways. The document Warren's attorney drew up had the standard protection stuff. His family assets stayed his family's. Any inheritance Samantha received was hers alone. Fine. I didn't want his money anyway. I wanted Samantha. But buried in Section 4, between the clauses about retirement accounts and intellectual property, was an infidelity clause. If either party cheated during the marriage, they forfeited any claim to assets acquired together and would be on the hook for the other party's legal fees. Warren had insisted on it, told me at the signing in his lawyer's office that he wanted to make sure I understood what would happen if I stepped out on his daughter, looked me dead in the eyes while he said it. I take loyalty seriously, Billy. I expect the same from anyone in this family. I'd signed it without hesitation, because I wasn't planning to step out on anyone. That's not who I am. Never has been. Samantha had signed it too. Probably didn't even read Section 4. Her lawyer explained it briefly, but she was distracted by wedding planning stuff and complaining about the caterer. Why would she worry about it? The whole thing was designed to protect her from the mechanic who might get ideas above his station. Friday afternoon, I sat in Nina's office with a folder of everything I'd collected over the past week. She flipped through it carefully, nodded a few times, made notes in the margins with a red pen that probably cost more than my watch, then asked if we had a prenup. I handed it over. She read the infidelity clause, then looked up at me. If you can prove the affair with solid evidence, the prenup really limits what she can claim. She loses leverage on the house, the savings, most of what you built together, and she's on the hook for a big chunk of legal fees. She won't walk away with nothing, but she'll walk away with way less than she's expecting. I asked what counted as the solid evidence. Stuff that would hold up if someone challenged it. Photographs with timestamps showing them together in situations that don't look good but aren't explicit. Witness statements if you can get them. Financial records showing money spent on the affair. And ideally, something that proves it was ongoing rather than a one-time thing someone could blame on having a moment of weakness. I told her I had Thursdays at 6 and a name. A guy from her office named Brett Halstead, who she'd mentioned at dinner parties with a little too much enthusiasm. Always laughing too hard at his stories. Always finding excuses to bring up his name. She told me to get pictures. Public places only. Nothing that could look like stalking or harassment. License plates. Faces. Them going into and coming out of places together. The kind of stuff anyone could see from a public sidewalk without breaking any laws. I left Nina's office with a game plan and a retainer agreement. Paid the first installment from a savings account Samantha didn't know about. The one I'd started when I was 19 for car restoration projects that I'd never gotten around to closing. That weekend, I called Cole and told him I needed a partner for some light surveillance work. Asked if he was free Thursday. What are we watching? My wife meeting her boyfriend. Long pause. I'll bring snacks. And probably my neighbor's binoculars. Maybe some other stuff too. Thursday afternoon, I left work early. Told my manager Gary I had a thing. Gary didn't ask questions. I picked up Cole from his place around 5. He climbed into my truck with a backpack full of stuff like we were going on a stakeout in a cop movie. 2 phones with fully charged batteries, a pair of binoculars he'd borrowed from his neighbor Jim who does bird watching on weekends and takes it way too seriously, a bag of beef jerky, a notebook for taking notes, and for some reason I still don't get a keychain panic alarm he'd bought from a gas station. Why the panic alarm? You never know, man. You just never know. He said it completely straight-faced, like it was obvious. We parked on a side street near South Washington, where I'd tracked her calendar entries to a general area based on timestamps and her usual driving routes. Settled in to wait, watched the street fill with people heading home from work. At 6:03, she walked up the sidewalk in a jacket I'd never seen before. Dark blue, fitted. She stopped near a bus stop and checked her phone every few seconds. Did that thing where she tucked hair behind her ear when she's nervous? Watching her wait for another man while I sat 50 feet away in my truck was like watching a stranger, a totally different person than the one you thought you married. At 6:07, a dark blue Honda Accord pulled up to the curb. She opened the passenger door like she'd done it 100 times before. No hesitation, no looking around first. The guy inside leaned over and kissed her cheek. The kind of kiss that has its own comfortable routine from months of doing the same thing. I got the shot. Clear photo of her face. His face. The license plate. Timestamp in the corner from my phone's camera. Cole squinted through the binoculars. Guy has a weak chin and bad hair. Looks like a middle manager who peaked in high school and never shut up about it. The car pulled away. I followed at a careful distance. They drove north toward Upper Arlington, one of those neighborhoods where lawn edges look like someone uses a ruler. They turned into a driveway at a beige house with dark shutters and professional landscaping. I parked around the corner out of sight, watched her get out and walk toward the garage. But she stopped, turned back toward the car. Brett was still in the driver's seat. She walked back to his door, leaned in through the window, and then climbed back into the passenger side. The car just sat there in the driveway. Engine off. Nobody getting out. They're not going inside. Nope. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. The windows started fogging up from the inside. Shapes moving behind the condensation. The kind of movement that doesn't need explanation. Cole wanted to get closer. I told him we had what we needed for now, but he was already out of the truck with his phone recording. He walked past the house like a guy who'd lost his dog. Got video of the fogged windows. The address numbers on the mailbox. Her car parked on the curb. Then he stopped near the end of the driveway pretending to take a phone call while filming. The car door flew open. Cole had gotten too close. Brett scrambled out first, tucking his shirt back in, face flushed and fuming. Samantha followed a second later, smoothing her hair down with shaking hands. Neither of them had seen Cole yet. They were too busy trying to look normal. Cole panicked, backed up too fast and kicked over their neighbor's trash bin sitting at the curb. The clatter echoed through the quiet suburban street. Recyclables scattered across the sidewalk. Brett froze mid-step like a deer in headlights. Samantha grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the garage. They disappeared inside within seconds, not even bothering to close the car doors behind them. Cole speed-walked back to the truck looking like he'd seen something he wished he hadn't. Got it all. Faces clear as day. I checked his phone. Clear shots of both of them mid-scramble. Brett's shirt untucked. Samantha's hair a mess. Timestamps in the corner. The kind of stuff that doesn't need explanation. I told him he was an absolute idiot, but I was laughing. First real laugh in weeks. Maybe months. Sometimes you need a friend who's willing to be stupid when everything else feels heavy. We waited another hour. At 7:30, a silver SUV pulled into the driveway. A woman got out with a gym bag and the look of someone running late for something routine. Walked inside without knocking, without hesitating. Like she lived there. Because she did. Brett was married. Of course he was. Because that's how these stories always go. Two people who convince themselves they're special enough that the rules don't apply to them. I spent the next 2 weeks building the documentation file like it was my second job. Followed them twice more with Cole riding shotgun. Got photos of them at a coffee shop downtown. His hand on her lower back as they walked in together. Timestamps clear on everything. The second surveillance run, Brett spotted us. Or thought he did. He looked directly at my truck for about 5 seconds while Samantha was ordering inside the coffee shop. I didn't flinch. Just stared back. He didn't look away right away like you'd expect. Instead, he smirked. Like some mid-level office guy who convinced himself he was special because someone else's wife thought he was interesting for a few months. Then he looked away, shoulders tensed up. Started checking his phone nervously. When Samantha came back with their drinks, I could see him whispering something. She glanced toward the truck, but I'd already pulled away. Let him wonder. My neighbor Frank helped without knowing exactly what he was helping with. Frank's retired and has security cameras covering half the street because he's convinced someone is going to steal his vintage motorcycle that he's been restoring for 6 years. One of his cameras caught Samantha leaving at 5:30 on Thursdays and returning after 9. 5 weeks of footage with timestamps. Frank burned it onto a USB drive for me and said he hoped whatever I was dealing with worked out. Marriage stuff? He asked, handing me the drive. Something like that? Well, whatever it is, hope you nail them. Never liked how she talked to you at the block party last summer. Talked down to you. Good neighbors are underrated. The next week I sent a message to Brett's wife. Found her through Facebook after some basic searching. Her name was Jenna. Kept it simple and clean, just like Nina had suggested. 3 sentences. My name. That I believed our spouses were having an ongoing affair. That I had documentation and was willing to share it if she wanted to get in touch. She responded within an hour, asked to meet somewhere private. We met at a coffee shop near her office the following day. She was calm, put together, the kind of woman who deals with crisis situations for a living, which made sense when she mentioned working in hospital administration. I showed her the photos on my phone, the timeline I'd put together, the calendar entries that lined up with her husband's supposed late work nights. She looked at them for a long time without speaking, scrolled through each image slowly, then asked how long I'd known for sure. Had my suspicions for months. Confirmed it 3 weeks ago with the photos. She nodded. Said she'd had suspicions too, but she'd talked herself out of them over and over because Brett always had explanations that sounded reasonable at the time. Work emergencies, client dinners, industry networking events. Good excuses are what experienced liars are best at. She thanked me for reaching out, asked if I was filing for divorce. I said yes. She said she would too, but she appreciated the heads up instead of finding out through gossip or court filings like some kind of fool. You deserve to make your own choices with real information, not get blindsided later. That's more courtesy than Brett's shown me in 15 years of marriage. We shook hands and went our separate ways. The week before service, I finalized everything. Cliff the paralegal connected me with a process server named Ray, who he described as professional, discreet, and willing to work with creative timing requests. I asked what creative timing meant exactly. Ray once served divorce papers to a guy at his own surprise birthday party. The guy's wife had planned the whole thing just for that moment. Invited 50 people. Cake and everything. I told Cliff I might have something even better. Nina helped me understand what I could and couldn't do before filing. I couldn't drain joint accounts without creating legal problems for myself, but I could document every penny in them. I could also quietly reduce my direct deposit to the joint account and redirect the difference to my solo savings. The one Samantha didn't know about. She didn't notice the reduced deposits. She was too busy running up charges on the joint credit card for spa visits and boutique shopping, and what I now understood were date outfits for Thursday evenings. Meanwhile, I started moving things into place, packed boxes of my personal stuff, and stored them in Cole's garage. Work clothes, tools, stuff from before the marriage, anything I didn't want to risk losing if things got ugly during the split. I secured important documents, put everything in a safety deposit box at a bank across town that Samantha had never been to. Told her I was organizing the garage. "That's very responsible of you," she said without looking up from her phone. Meanwhile, Samantha's friend Veronica started coming around more often. Long whispered conversations on the back porch. The two of them shooting me looks across rooms. I knew exactly what was happening. Veronica was running damage control prep, coaching Samantha on how to spin things if everything blew up, probably telling her to document my absences and any fights we had, building a counter story just in case. I overheard Samantha on the phone one night, telling Veronica that I'd been distant lately, that she was worried I was pulling away. Not once did she mention why I might be pulling away. She was already rewriting history. Fine. Let them build their little fortress of lies. One evening, I came home to find Veronica and Samantha huddled over Samantha's phone at the kitchen table. They went silent the second I walked in. Veronica smiled at me with that condescending look. "Billy, working late again?" "Just putting in the hours." I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. "Someone has to." Veronica's smile flickered. Samantha shot her a look. The vibe in the room got weird fast. I went to the garage and worked on an old radio I'd picked up at an estate sale. Let them whisper. Their schemes required me to be the same predictable guy I'd always been. But that guy was already halfway out the door. The Sunday before the main event, I confirmed final details with Ray the process server, asked where I wanted service to happen. I told him about Samantha's parents' house, the monthly family dinner Warren insisted on hosting. Second Sunday of every month without exception. Always formal. Always the full family gathered around an expensive table, eating food prepared by a private chef. "You're absolutely sure? Serving someone at a family event will be memorable for everyone there." "That's exactly the point. I'll be there at 7, right between the salad and the main course. They won't know what hit them." Sunday dinner at Warren and Elaine's house was always a production. White tablecloth ironed to perfection. Real silverware polished to a shine. Formal place settings with more forks than anyone actually needs. I showed up on time wearing the nice shirt Samantha always said made me look respectable. Smiled at Warren. Complimented Elaine on the centerpiece flowers. Sat next to Samantha like nothing in the world was wrong. Her brother Todd was there with his wife Lisa, who always looked slightly uncomfortable at these formal dinners. Warren's sister Carol and her husband Dennis had driven in from the east side for the occasion. 8 people total around the table. Samantha was in full performance mode, laughing at her dad's unfunny jokes about politics, helping her mom bring dishes from the kitchen, playing the devoted daughter and supportive wife like she'd been practicing for years. I played along perfectly, passed the breadbasket when asked, talked about the weather and the local sports teams with Todd, discussed garage organization tips with Dennis, who was apparently renovating his workshop. Samantha caught me checking my phone once, gave me that annoyed look. I smiled at her, the kind that probably confused her because it didn't match anything she was expecting from me lately. At 6:58, the doorbell rang. Elaine looked confused. I wasn't expecting anyone else, were you, Warren? I offered to get it, pushed back my chair, walked to the front door, opened it. Ray was standing there in khakis and a polo shirt. Looked like an insurance salesman, or maybe a guy selling lawn care services. Totally unremarkable. He was holding a manila envelope that looked equally unremarkable. I stepped aside and gestured toward the dining room. Ray walked through the foyer like he owned the place. Stepped into the dining room where everyone was frozen mid-conversation. Everyone staring at this stranger who just appeared at their formal Sunday dinner, like some kind of bad magic trick. Ray looked around the table calmly. Which one of you is Samantha? She looked up from her salad, fork frozen halfway to her mouth, face cycling through confusion and annoyance and something like fear. Ray walked directly to her chair and set the envelope on the table in front of her plate. You've been served. Divorce papers filed in county court. Then he nodded at me like we were just two guys who happened to bump into each other at the store, turned around, walked out, and closed the front door behind him. For about 4 seconds, nobody in that dining room moved or breathed or spoke. It was beautiful. The kind of perfect silence you can't buy, worth every penny of the legal fees. Then chaos erupted. Samantha grabbed the envelope, tore it open, started reading with hands shaking visibly. Her face went white, then red. Warren demanded to know what was going on. Elaine looked like she might need a doctor. Dennis was frozen with his water glass halfway to his lips. Samantha looked at me across the table, eyes wild and wet. What did you do, Billy? What is this? Divorce. Based on the infidelity clause in the prenup your father made us sign 8 years ago. Section 4. The one designed to protect us from each other's mistakes. Warren's face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Confusion. Denial. The slow, grinding realization of what that clause actually meant here. Then something that might have been grudging respect, mixed with horror at what his own legal protection had done. Samantha started crying. It wasn't what you think. I can explain everything if you'll just let me talk to you alone. Please. You can explain to Nina, my attorney. Contact info is in the packet along with discovery requests and financial disclosure forms. I stood up, straightened my chair, thanked Elaine for the food, told Warren I'd always appreciated his advice about protecting what matters. Walked out the front door and drove to Cole's house without looking back once. Cole had wings waiting. Holly had put Jake to bed early so we could talk. How did it go? She literally had the salad fork in her hand when she got served. Her dad's face was priceless, like watching someone realize they built the trap that caught their own kid. Cole raised his soda can in a toast. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. The fallout started Monday morning. Samantha left voicemails, sent texts, variations of "we can work this out," and "you're destroying our family over nothing, and please just talk to me like adults." I didn't respond to any of them. Nina had told me to route everything through her office, so I forwarded the messages and let legal handle it. By Tuesday, Veronica had jumped in, started texting me directly from her own number, like she had any right to be involved. You humiliated her in front of her whole family at her own parents' house. Everyone they know is going to hear about what kind of person you really are. You're going to regret this. I screenshotted every single message and sent them to Nina. Evidence of harassment goes in the file. By Wednesday, the story war had started. Friends started reaching out with concerned messages, some with genuine worry about both of us. Most with obvious fishing expeditions coordinated by Veronica based on how similar the wording was. Did something happen between you two? Samantha seems really upset. She said you completely blindsided her out of nowhere. She's telling people you're having some kind of breakdown. I kept my responses short and neutral. Said it was a private matter between me and Samantha. That I wished her well but we were going separate directions. That I didn't want to put anyone in an awkward spot by sharing details they didn't need. The ones who pushed harder got blocked. The ones who clearly sided with Samantha without hearing anything got blocked faster. Cleaned out about 15 contacts from my phone that week. Thursday, Samantha's attorney sent Nina a letter demanding forensic accountants to examine my personal finances. Claimed I'd been hiding assets and financially abusing her throughout the marriage. The letter used phrases like pattern of coercive control and economic manipulation. Nina sent back the prenup with Section 4 highlighted in bright yellow, attached a summary of the photos showing Samantha entering Brett's house repeatedly over 5 weeks. Noted that any further bogus claims would be met with motions for sanctions and potential bar complaints for wasting everyone's time. The forensic accountant request vanished like it never existed. Samantha's attorney suddenly got a lot more reasonable about settlement talks. Friday, I heard through Cliff that Brett's wife had filed for divorce. Apparently, she'd gone full scorched earth with custody requests, and a claim on the house and retirement accounts, and a demand for spousal support that would have made a corporate lawyer wince. Brett apparently tried calling Samantha that weekend, multiple times based on what I heard through people later. She didn't pick up. Probably realized being connected to him was now a legal problem, instead of an exciting escape from boring married life. I didn't feel sorry for him. He was just a guy who made choices and found out that choices have consequences. Same as Samantha. Same as all of us eventually. The following week, Samantha tried a softer approach. Showed up at Carter Auto during my lunch break, looking like she'd walked out of a magazine shoot. Full makeup. Hair professionally styled. Wearing the kind of outfit you wear when you want to remind someone what they're losing. Ben, the kid who works the front counter, saw her walk in and suddenly remembered urgent inventory he needed to check in the back room. Smart kid, knows when to disappear. She asked if we could talk somewhere private. Voice soft. Eyes doing that thing where they're wet but not actually crying yet. Talk to my attorney. This is between us. Not lawyers and courtrooms and legal strategy. Just two people who used to love each other trying to figure things out. The person I loved wouldn't have spent Thursday evenings at another man's house for months, while I thought she was at some vague work, meeting every week. She flinched hard. It was a mistake. Veronica pushed the whole thing. I felt ignored for years, and she kept saying I deserved to feel wanted by someone who actually paid attention. Veronica wasn't in those photos. You were. Veronica didn't punch in his garage code every Thursday. You did. She started crying harder. We could do counseling, intensive stuff, work on rebuilding everything, start over from scratch like when we first met. The prenup doesn't have a counseling exception, just an infidelity clause. And you signed it in your father's lawyer's office 8 years ago while barely looking at Section 4. Cole showed up right on time. We'd planned lunch. He walked in wearing his work clothes and a baseball cap, looked at Samantha, looked at me. Everything good here? We're just wrapping up. Samantha looked between us, realized she was outnumbered, said this conversation wasn't over, that she'd keep trying. You can try all you want. The answer's gonna stay the same. 3 months after the family dinner service, the divorce was finalized. The prenup did exactly what Warren's expensive lawyers had designed it to do, just not for the person he'd originally meant to protect. I kept the house, most of the savings, the truck. She walked away with way less than she'd expected, and a lot less than she would have gotten without Section 4 hanging over her head. Her attorney stopped fighting once Nina made clear how much documentation we had, and how bad it would look in front of a judge. Samantha moved in with Veronica at first, then moved out after 6 weeks because apparently Veronica was a lot less supportive when Samantha no longer had a house and husband to complain about. Turns out Veronica's friendship depended on having drama to feed on. When the drama became Samantha's actual life instead of entertaining gossip, Veronica found other sources of entertainment. Last I heard through people, Samantha was renting an apartment near her parents and doing something with online wellness coaching. The kind of social media job that sounds impressive in Instagram bios, but doesn't actually pay rent. Her dad was probably covering the shortfall while pretending he wasn't and holding it over her head at every family dinner. Brett's divorce was messier than mine by a factor of 10. His wife had better lawyers and more documentation, and the kind of righteous anger that doesn't accept fair when scorched earth is on the table. He lost the house, lost primary custody of his kids, lost his reputation at work where everyone now knew exactly what he'd done. Heard through the grapevine that Brett tried to blame everything on Samantha. Told his wife and anyone who would listen that Samantha had come after him, that she was the one chasing, that he'd been seduced by a lonely housewife who wouldn't take no for an answer. It didn't work. His wife had the same photos I did. Last I heard, he was working at a different company in a different city. Fresh start. Clean slate. The kind of running away that never actually fixes anything. The final confrontation came on a random Saturday, 8 months after everything was legally done. I was in the garage working on the old radio I'd picked up at that estate sale. Finally got the AM frequencies working. A car pulled into the driveway. Samantha's car. She got out looking worse than I'd ever seen her. Hair unwashed for what looked like days. No makeup. Clothes wrinkled. This was desperation without the costume. She walked into my garage without asking permission, like she still belonged here. Said everything had completely fallen apart. Brett had cut her off and blocked her number months ago. Veronica had found new drama to obsess over and stopped answering calls. Her dad was still furious about the family embarrassment, and her mom wouldn't stop bringing it up at their monthly dinners, and Todd wouldn't respond to texts anymore. The wellness coaching thing had failed. The apartment was too expensive. She was running out of options. I put down the soldering iron and waited. Didn't offer comfort. Just waited. She stepped closer into my space. I miss you. I miss what we had. I miss the stability I threw away for Thursday nights that turned out to be worthless. Brett was nothing. He didn't mean anything. It was just attention. That life is gone. She started crying harder. Is there any chance of starting over? Any way back? Anything I can do to fix what I broke? You can leave. She grabbed my arm. The same desperate move she'd tried at the shop. You're really going to throw away 8 years like they meant nothing? You threw them away. Every Thursday at 6, for months straight, while I thought you were at some vague meeting like your calendar said. You made that choice over and over. I just dealt with the fallout. She said she was sorry, that she'd do literally anything to fix this. Anything doesn't include a time machine, and that's the only thing that could actually fix this. She stood there crying in my garage, waiting for me to crack, waiting for the old version of me to show up and offer comfort and second chances. He didn't show up. That version of me was gone. If you're not off my property in 60 seconds, I'm calling police and reporting you for trespassing. She opened her mouth to try one more time. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. She left, slammed the car door hard enough to echo down the street, peeled out of the driveway like she was auditioning for a car commercial. I went back to the radio, got the AM frequencies crisp and clear by sunset. Cole came over that evening with Jake. The kid turned the radio dial through static and stations while we stood in the garage doorway watching. You actually doing okay? Better than okay. The house is quiet. I don't wonder where my wife is on Thursday nights anymore. And I never have to sit through another awkward family dinner at Warren's house pretending everything is fine. That's a pretty low bar for happiness. You'd be surprised how good a low bar feels when you've been tripping over a high one for years without even knowing it was there. Jake found an AM station playing old country music. We listened while Cole grilled burgers on the back patio, and the evening settled into something peaceful and simple. A few months later, I met someone at a volunteer event at the food bank downtown. Her name's Megan. She works in veterinary medicine. I didn't rush anything with her. Still don't. But when I come home now, the house feels different. Lighter. Samantha still sends the occasional text on holidays and birthdays. The kind of reaching out that pretends to be friendly, but is really just checking if the door might still be open. It isn't. It won't ever be again. I don't wish her harm, but I don't wish her anything either. The prenup Warren made us sign turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. His expensive lawyers accidentally protected me from his own daughter. The irony is thick enough to spread on toast. I should probably send him a thank you card for insisting on Section 4. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.